In this Flies of P video, I'm going to be covering the Lethal Gambit build, which is a build that uses quick attacks with a dagger to deal huge amounts of damage in a short period of time, finishing fights quickly and with finesse. The Lethal Gambit build focuses on attacking quickly and overwhelming the enemy with huge DPS, as well as unexpected staggers that are unusual coming from a dagger weapon. The reasoning behind the combination of the Tyrant Murderer's Dagger blade with the Wintry Rapier's handle is purely because of the matching attack types of stabbing and the good moveset that the handle provides to the weapon. The main weakness of daggers is that they have extremely short range, making the weapon type feel difficult to use and frustrating. A good example of this is the Master Chef's Knife, a dagger where the heavy and normal attacks are of a short range and don't move the character much closer to the target, making it easy to miss unless you're completely point blank. The Rapier handle combats this disadvantage by offering the range that most daggers lack, making you step forward with every attack as you would expect from a rapier weapon. The Tyrant Murderer's Dagger blade has been chosen as the dagger blade because of its unique 30% critical strike property. This dagger is probably the strongest in the game simply for this attack type. We use it alongside the rapier handle to make a deadly combo. We will be using a Fable art very often in this build called the Grind Fable art on the Tyrant Murderer's Dagger blade. This Fable art increases our critical chance for only one Fable slot, boosting DPS to insane levels for very cheap. This allows us to build around constantly keeping this effect up by choosing specific P-organ upgrades, while adding a Grindstone effect to the weapon in order to further boost its damage, on top of an amulet which increases damage done for every attack you do for up to 4 attacks. Overall, giving explosive DPS for short periods of time, which can be repeated easily thanks to the low cost of grind. Note that this build will have some super endgame components that will boost its damage considerably, but these are all alternative to what we use for the majority of the game that work very well regardless. The best starter class for this build will be the Path of the Bastard Dexterity, as the Wintry Rapier's handle favors technique scaling and is acquired as your starting weapon by choosing this class. However, if you choose one of the other classes, you can purchase it from a merchant. You'll deal less damage if you choose the other classes, so if you want to get the absolute maximum damage output, be sure to choose the Dexterity path. Keep in mind that while you can respec, you cannot respec the starting class stats, so if you want to min-max this build completely, you must choose the recommended build path. For Area 1 and Area 2, the beginner weapon will be just fine as you don't get many other options early on. Once you get into Area 3, I recommend using the Salamander Dagger if you're looking for a similar playstyle to use until you reach the Tyrant's Blade. You could even put the Rapier handle on it like we do with the Tyrant's Blade if you want to get a feel for the moveset. The Salamander Dagger can be found in Area 3 Workshop Union Entrance Stargazer by taking immediate right up the stairs and going into the first room on your left, which will have a trapdoor that leads to a few puppets and a safe containing the Salamander Dagger blade and handle. To obtain the Tyrant Murderer's Dagger, you'll need to buy it from Pulcinella after acquiring the item Incredible Vanini Collection. This item can be located in the Opera House in Area 6. From the Estella Opera House entrance Stargazer, run in a directly straight line through the door leading to the burning chandelier. From here, fall into the hole in the ground under the chandelier and run through the corridor on the right. Take another right after reaching another corridor and continue straight into a room with a legless puppet inside. In here will be a safe containing the Incredible Vanini Collection. You can take this back to Hotel Krat and give it to Pulcinella to expand his inventory of merchandise, which will include the Tyrant Murderer's Dagger that goes for 2,000 ergo. The Wintry Rapier's handle is easily obtained at the start of the game. You can either choose the starting class Path of the Bastard Dexterity to get the Wintry Rapier for free, or purchase it from the wandering merchant you meet at the Cirsani Alley Stargazer for 300 ergo. As this weapon uses the Wintry Rapier's handle, it will be a technique-based build with scaling of D in motivity and B in technique. You can further enhance the damage by using a technique crank on the handle, put the scalings as 0 for motivity and A for technique, or you could change it to a balanced scaling using a motivity crank to make it C scaling for both stats. Besides technique, you'll need high vitality for survivability and high vigor to be able to relentlessly attack after casting grind. Lastly, get a bit of capacity to hold more puppet parts. However, this stat will be quite low at endgame as we'll only be equipping a dagger, giving us lots of spare weight. Advance and motivity are not needed at all in this build. As for the order in which you level, invest in vitality for the first 10 levels, as extra HP allows you to make more mistakes without dying. Then for the next 20 or so levels, you should focus on technique for weapon damage and vigor. At this point in the game, you'll get puppet parts that start to weigh you down, so start leveling capacity a tiny bit to increase the amount of weight you can hold so P stays under the 80% load in his weight stat. This is important because your normal roll becomes much slower when you pass the 80% threshold, so if you want to equip those heavy puppet parts to be tanky, level capacity once you start getting them. From this point, you should level all the default abilities equally, following these endgame stat distributions. 37 Vitality gives you about 700 health, which allows you to tank tons of hits, and 26 Vigor feels like the sweet spot for how long you can spam this weapon. 18 Capacity allows you to get the bare minimum weight to equip the heaviest puppet parts along with the rest of the build, giving you an overall of 77% capacity. 37 technique gives tons of damage, but you could allocate points elsewhere after reaching 35, since you barely increase weapon damage after that point. For this build, we'll only be using one special amulet that is extremely important to the damage of this build, so make sure you don't spend the boss ergo of it on the weapon counterpart. In the first slot will be the Assassin's Amulet. This is a super late game amulet found in the Arch Abbey upper part internal bridge in the final area. This is amazing for our overall DPS as we get a boost to our crit damage, giving a big boost to our DPS in general. An earlier alternative to this amulet can be swapping between any of the 3 extra damage to enemy type amulets, which are the Carcass Butcher's Amulet, Murderer Puppet's Amulet, or the Puppet Destroyer's Amulet. This will give a general damage buff, which is probably on par to the damage increase you would get from the Assassin's Amulet, but only to specific enemy types. In the second amulet slot, I put the Arm of God Amulet. This amulet will increase your damage every time you attack up to 4 stacks for 5 seconds after attacking. Wintry Rapier's handle has an extremely fast moveset, so you can very quickly stack this damage buff and pair it with a Grind Fable art to deliver really good DPS. In the third amulet slot, you'll use the Carrier's Amulet +1. This or the normal Carrier's Amulet is great for saving some levels that would normally be spent on capacity in order to naturally hold all of our gear or the high tier puppet parts we use. An alternative amulet for you if you wish to use a squishy build with less heavy puppet parts would be the Patience Amulet to get you back in combat quickly with enhanced stamina regeneration. And in the last amulet slot, I decided to go with the Red Fox Amulet. This amulet will increase technique and motivity by +3, but unfortunately, it is also in the final area of the game. The early alternative would simply be the Technique Amulet for an easy +4 technique. The reason why the Red Fox Amulet is better than the Technique Amulet is because each point counts as a level to your character, which gives you extra resistances against physical damage, fire damage, etc. The Red Fox Amulet will give a very slightly lower damage bonus, but give 2 more levels of resistance, making it the better amulet overall. In the early going of the game, I found that the Flame Grindstone was great for increasing DPS of this build further, as targets who overheated will take increased damage from fire damage. However, this is not the best Grindstone to use. The best Grindstone will be the Satisfaction Grindstone, which will increase the critical rate of your weapon. Using this paired with a Grind Fable art will give you close to 100% critical chance on the Dagger, making it do great sword levels of damage in its normal and heavy attacks, which is ridiculous for its attack speed. Stack this with the Assassin's Amulet and you'll be wielding the Holy Sword of the Ark, shrunk to dagger form. The best P-Organ synergy effects for the Lethal Gambit build are the following. Increase pull cells. This increases your survivability and sustain against bosses and areas. Link dodge. This allows you to dodge further away from wide AoE attacks. Add amulet slots. This allows you to equip more powerful amulets which can increase damage, improve survivability, and provide special effects. Enhance pull cell recovery. This improves survivability and sustain against bosses and in areas. Add Fable slots. This will allow you to use the Grind Fable art as often as possible. Retain Guard Regain 1. This gives you some extra survivability to add to this build. Perfect Guard cause stiffness. You will be perfect guarding in order to generate Fable quickly, so this pairs well. Increase special Grindstone use. The Grindstone becomes a core part of this build later, and it's good early too, so increasing its uses will be great. For the individual effects you get from spending one corpse, under attack type you'll want Enhanced Charge Stagger Attack, Enhanced Fatal Attack, Increased Fable Art Effect Duration, Lower Weapon Durability Consumption, and Enhanced Stagger Attack from behind. For survival type, you want Enhanced Guard Regain Recovery, lower damage while dodging, lower guard regain reduction, and perfect guard regain recovery. For ability type, you want lower charge attack stamina consumption, perfect guard fable charge enhance, reduce stamina consumption from dash, fatal attack fable charger, and special grindstone weapon durability recovery. And for item type, you want special grindstone increase effect duration. When it comes to your Legion arm, the Legion arm that felt best with this build is the Puppet String to close the distance between you and an enemy, since your range is still a little short despite using the Wintry Rapier's handle. Can't get crits from the attack link upgrade, but it's nevertheless good damage and stagger. Other Legion arms can work, so don't feel limited to this one, and experiment with what you enjoy most. In this build, I always used the highest weight puppet part I found, which made me extremely tanky by the end of the game. I kept my equipment weight down using the Carrier's Amulet when needed and leveling capacity, allowing me to equip heavy parts without passing the weight threshold. Final tips. While an aggressive playstyle is intended with this build, it's easy to go overboard and forget about perfect parrying and dodging attacks while completely immersed in the big red crits that you deal. Make sure you balance aggression with a reasonable defense, as if you can't make the most out of your Grindstone Fable art while it's active because you get knocked down, you will find yourself out of Fable slots and thus down DPS until you charge up more. Secondly, try to ignore the Arm of God passive that you can see while playing. You may feel anxiety and try to get an attack in before the buff runs out, but trying to play around the 5 seconds of uptime the damage boost has will just make you misplay by attacking when you aren't supposed to. This weapon attacks stupidly fast, so you can get all of your stacks back from just one quick heavy attack and one light attack. And lastly, don't use the grind Fable Art against normal enemies. The weapon already has a built-in critical rate that will deal some extra damage, and using a Fable slot for a bonus on trash mobs is a waste. I recommend using it constantly against mini-bosses and any tanky mobs that you find in the game though. So that wraps up our Lethal Gambit build. I hope you guys got something useful out of this one. It's a bit different than some of the other builds we've done. And if you guys need other builds, make sure you check them out on our channel. If you have questions or other useful information for players, make sure you leave them in the comments below.